Okay, so to begin playing this 12-bar blues, we'll start with a hammer-on the open B string to the 2nd fret of the same string. However, I'd suggest doing this while holding down an E chord, as this will set us up nicely for the first bar. So in actual fact, you probably want to do this with your 4th finger. The first thing you probably want to take note of is the bass pattern that's happening with the thumb. In this case, we're bouncing between the E string and the D string. I'm slightly palm muting here, but you don't need to. If you haven't yet learned thumb independence, then this is maybe something you want to look into, as it makes learning pieces like this a lot easier, as the same patterns keep cropping up. Thumb independence, if you haven't come across the term, is basically when you can develop a bass pattern with your thumb on autopilot. And when you've got this, this makes it far easier to add notes in and around the bass pattern, such as whether you've got thumb independence or not yet, you can still learn this piece, just take it at your own pace. So let's start by playing both E strings together, followed by the D string with the thumb, both E's together again, followed by the B. So that's 1, 2, 3, and. After this, you've got another bass on the D, followed by another high E string. All together, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. Bar 2 starts in a similar way, so we're still ticking away with the bass pattern. We've got the low E string, followed by the D string, back to the E string, and the next thing that happens is something that you'll see a lot in many fingerstyle pieces, so you'll have to develop this. It's the ability to hammer on a note with the left hand, and when it lands onto the note, you need to make sure that your thumb's there to play the bass note. So you could time this by going 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Once you get the knack of it, it's quite easy, but until then you might struggle with this. Either way, here's how it sounds. Followed by a B string on the 4 and. So all together, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. Bars 1 and 2 together sound like this. Bar 3 is much the same, so we'll play our 2 E strings, followed by a D string with the thumb, 2 E strings again, followed by the B string, open. So 1, 2, 3, and then we need to play the thumb on the D string once more. And at this point, you'll see that we've introduced the 3rd fret on the B string, so we're going to grab this with our little finger, or 4th finger. That's on the 4 and, so 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. Bar 4, we're still ticking away with our bass pattern, so we've got a low E string by itself, followed by a D string, back to the E string. Now, once again, we've got this same thing where you've got to hammer on with the left hand, and when it lands on the correct note, you need to also match that on the beat with your thumb. In this particular example, we're using our little finger to hammer onto the 2nd fret of the open B string. And when this lands on the 2nd fret, you need to make sure you're there with your thumb on the D string. And then in the context of the bar, so that concludes the first 4 bars of our 12-bar blues. Let me play that through for you. So it would start 1, 2, 3. Okay, now let's move to the next 2 bars of our 12-bar blues, which are all over an A chord, or A7 chord. So for these 2 bars, let's make sure you've got the right chord pushed down before we begin. So that would be an open A string, a 2nd fret on the D string with our 1st finger. We've got a G string open, B string 2nd fret with our 2nd finger, And then for this last one, on the 3rd fret of the high E string, you can choose either your 3rd finger or your little finger or 4th finger. It makes no difference, it's whatever you're comfortable with. Okay, so with that pushed down, you'll notice that we've got this bouncing pattern again, but this time it's between the A string and D string. So okay, so we'll start off by pinching the high E string, the B string, and the A string all together, before bouncing to the D string, before playing the A string again with our thumb and the high E string, and then playing the B string. So that's 1, 2, 3, and. After this, you're going to bounce to the D string once more, and then play the high E string once more on the 4 and. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4 and. So for this bar, we're still bouncing between the 2 bass notes. So we'll start with an A string by itself, followed by the D string, another A string, and now we've got that same move that we played before. In this case, it's a hammer-on from the B string open to the 2nd fret, which we're going to do with our middle finger. And when it lands on the 2nd fret, you need to time that correctly so that you're playing the D string with your thumb, like this. And in context, and those 2 bars played together. And then once more, a bit more up to speed. And now let's move on to the next 2 bars, which return back to the E chord again. So this first bar is nice and easy. Make sure you've got an E chord pushed down. And we're going to play both E strings together, followed by the D string, both E's, followed by the B string, followed by the D string, and then the high E string. Timing wise, that's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. And for the next bar, we've got a really nice sounding move, which sounds like this. So for the first 2 E strings, the low E string and the high E string, you want to make sure your hand's off the E chord to play these. This gives you a bit of time to move to the next shape, which is our 4th fret on the low E string and our 3rd fret on the B string. So we've got. After this, you're going to play both the A string open and high E string open together, followed by the 2nd fret on the high E string and the 1st fret on the A string. I'm using my 1st finger and 3rd finger. So all together, nice and slow. And then those 2 bars played together. So start by holding down the E chord. Which brings us to the B7 chord. So to begin this bar, make sure you've got the correct chord pushed down. So in this case, that's your 2nd finger on the A string 2nd fret, your 1st finger on the D string 1st fret, 3rd finger on the G string 2nd fret, and now we're going to place our little finger actually on the 3rd fret of the B string, which technically makes this chord a B7 sharp 9, but really we're just going for an overall sound of B7, like a dominant chord. In this case, it's the Jimi Hendrix chord. So once you've got this pushed down, we're still getting this bouncing motion between the thumb, and it's again on the A string and D string. So that sounds like this. So let's start by playing the A string bass note and the B string together, before letting go of the little finger to reveal the open B string. So that's 1 and. After this, we're going to go to our thumb on the D string, followed by the G string. So that's 1 and 2 and. Followed by the A string, open B string, back to the D string with the thumb. So that'll be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And a bit more up to speed. The next bar, we're going to go back to our A7 chord, same fingering, so 1st finger, middle finger, and either 3rd or little, up to you. We've got the same bass pattern, A string and D string. In this case, we're going to play the bass note first on the A string, followed by the B string, before playing the D string and high E string together. Sounds like this. After this, let go of your fourth finger from the high E string, as we want to play the open high E string and the A string together. So, after this, you've got the same move where you need to hammer on from a 0 open string on the B string to the 2nd fret. And when you land on that 2, you need to make sure you're there with your D string thumb together. And we're going to chase that up with the high E string open. So, all together, that sounds like this. And up to speed. I'll put those two bars together, so the B7 and the A7. Which brings us to our last two bars of the 12-bar blues, which we'd call a turnaround. It's called this because it gets you really nicely back to bar 1 again, so you can repeat the whole arrangement once more. Sounds like this. To play this, we'll start by playing the low E followed by the high E string. After this, you want to play this shape, which is our 2nd finger on the 4th fret of the big E string, our 3rd finger on the 4th fret of the G, and our 1st finger on the 3rd fret of the B string. We're going to pinch these all together, so that's thumb, 1st finger, and 2nd finger. Now after this, to get into the next shape really easily, all you need to do is remove every finger apart from your 1st finger and slide this down to the 2nd fret. At this point, you want to pinch the A string, G string, and B string. So that's... At this point, try and grab the 1st fret of the A string with your middle finger, or 2nd finger, and the 1st fret of the B string with your 3rd finger. You're still pinching the same strings here, so A string, G string, and B string. All together. This brings us to the last bar, where we want to hold down basically an E chord, although it's more like an E7, you don't need this 3rd finger, so you can pop that one off. So try and play the A string and the G string together using your thumb and 1st finger, and we're going to hammer on to the 1st fret with our 1st finger. Followed by the high E string, and we're going to play this like a triplet, so 1 triplet. And now you want to grab this chord, which is a C9 chord. We're going to use this to approach a B9 chord. So the fingering here is middle finger or 2nd finger, 3rd fret on the A string, 1st finger on the D string, 2nd fret, 3rd finger on the G string, 3rd fret, and 4th finger on the B string, 3rd fret. And then all you need to do to get to the B9, which is our last chord in the song, is slide this whole shape down 1 fret. So that bar all together, and then the whole turnaround. And to get back to the start of the song, all you need to do is play your pickup line that we learned at the beginning of this lesson, which was just that hammer on from the B string open to the 2nd fret. And remember, hold down your E chord, because we need to set ourselves up for the 1st bar, so you'll actually be doing that with your little finger. So now let me show you that in context.